For your whole financial life, one idea has quietly done the heavy lifting for you. Time. You could start late, save badly, panic in your 40s, and still tell yourself the same comforting story. There's time. Compounding will bail me out. I'll catch up later. In your 50s, that story stops being true. This is the decade the math turns honest, and the clock, which used to be your silent partner, becomes the thing you can hear ticking. Here is the sentence that defines the next 10 years. You can't out-compound a late start anymore. That's not meant to scare you. It's meant to focus you, because there is still a great deal you can do in this decade, more than almost anyone in it realizes. By the end of this video, you will know exactly where the typical 50-something actually stands, why the clock speeds up, and the specific moves that let you beat the middle of the pack even now. We're standing high on the hill now. If you've followed this series, you've watched net worth climb from near zero in the 20s, through the trap-springing 30s, into the honest math of the 40s. The 50s are the last long stretch of the climb before the summit. And they come with their own distinct set of lessons. I'm going to give you 6 of them. The reality gap hiding behind a benchmark you've probably been beaten over the head with. Why time stops being your ally. The last real gift the system hands you before you retire. The mental shift from growing the pile to protecting it. The one piece of math that finally tells you how much is actually enough. And the savings window most people get in this decade and quietly waste. 2 numbers first, then the 6 unlocks, then exactly how to beat the median from here. Picture the hill one more time. You are near the top now, but not at it. You're on that final steep pitch just below the peak, close enough to see the summit, close enough to know the descent is coming after it. This is the 55 to 64 bracket, and it's the last full decade of accumulation most people will ever get. Here are the 2 numbers, and remember the rule from the whole series. Watch the gap between them, because the gap is the size of the lie. The average net worth for households in this bracket is about $1.5 million. $1,566,000 to be precise. That number sounds like a generation that has arrived, a group comfortably set for retirement. Now here's the honest one, the median. The real person standing in the exact middle of everyone this age is about $364,000. Sit with that distance for a second. The average is more than 4 times the median. This is one of the most brutal gaps on the entire chart, and there's a reason it widens right here. A lifetime of small differences in saving has now fully compounded into enormous differences in outcome. The person who started at 25 and never flinched, and the person who woke up at 45 in a panic are standing in completely different financial worlds, even if they earned nearly identical paychecks their whole lives. The average describes the winners at the top. The median describes you, and it always did. So when a headline tells you people your age are millionaires, understand what you're looking at. A handful of large numbers doing what they always do to an average. Let's climb into the 6 things that actually define this decade. Somewhere in your 40s or 50s, you probably ran into a rule of thumb that goes like this. By the time you're 50, you should have roughly 6 times your salary saved. It gets repeated everywhere, usually attributed to one big, popular firm, and it lands like a verdict. 6 times your salary. If you earn $100,000, that benchmark says you should be sitting on $600,000 in retirement savings alone, not counting the house. Now hold that benchmark up against the real median we just saw. The typical 50-something household, counting everything, the retirement accounts, the home equity, all of it, is at about $364,000 total. The benchmark wants $600,000 in the retirement account by itself. Do you see the distance? For a huge share of people, the popular rule of thumb isn't a description of where they are. It's a description of a place they can see across a canyon. I'm not showing you this gap to make you feel behind. I'm showing it to you because that benchmark is quietly doing the same thing the average does. It's built off the frontrunners, and it treats their trajectory as everyone's baseline. Most people are not at 6 times salary by 50. The honest distance between the tidy benchmark and the real median is not a personal failure. It's the norm. What matters now is not how far you are from a slogan on a chart. It's what you do with the specific, countable number of years you have left. And that's where the clock comes in. For 30 years, this channel and every honest voice in personal finance has told you the same beautiful thing. Start early, because compounding does the work. $1 invested at 25 becomes something enormous by 65, because it has 40 years to double and double and double again. Compounding is a snowball, and the snowball needs a long, long hill to grow. In your 50s, the hill runs out. Here's the uncomfortable arithmetic. Money invested in broad market stocks has historically taken roughly 7 to 10 years to double. When you're 25, that means 3 or 4 doublings still ahead of you, the last one being by far the biggest. When you're 55, you might get 1 more doubling before you need the money. Maybe. The final, most powerful doubling, the one that turns a large number into a life-changing one, happens after you've stopped working. If it happens at all, you no longer have time to wait it out. So the lever quietly switches. For the 25-year-old, the balance today barely matters. What matters is that they started the clock, because time will do the rest. For you in your 50s, it inverts. Compounding is no longer the main engine. Your contributions are. The dollars you shovel in over these final working years drive the number now far more than the growth on what's already there. This is the great reversal of the decade, and almost nobody names it out loud. In your 50s, saving beats returns, because time has stopped volunteering to help you, which is exactly why the next thing matters so much. Here's a piece of good news that the 50s hand you, and that a shocking number of people never use. Once you cross age 50, the tax system opens a door it kept shut your entire life. It lets you put more money, meaningfully more, into your tax-advantaged retirement accounts than younger people are allowed to. These are called catch-up contributions, and they are, quite literally, the system's last gift before you retire. Think about what that means. For your whole career, there was a ceiling on how much you could shield from taxes inside a retirement account each year. In your 50s, that ceiling rises. You're suddenly allowed to funnel thousands of extra dollars a year into the account where growth compounds untaxed, and it arrives at the one moment in life when you might actually be able to use it. The kids are more independent, the mortgage is smaller, the income is often at its peak. The door opens exactly when you finally have the cash flow to walk through it. And yet most people leave it closed. They don't raise their contribution the year they turn 50. They don't check the new, higher limit. They let the extra room sit there, unused, one of the few genuine advantages the system ever offers them. And it's a use-it-or-lose-it window, because every year you don't max it is a year of tax-advantaged room that simply expires. If you take one action from this entire video, let it be this. Find out what your catch-up limit is and get as close to filling it as your budget allows. In a decade where contributions matter more than compounding, the system just raised the amount you're allowed to contribute. That is not a coincidence you should waste. For your whole life, the game had one rule: grow the pile. Bigger balance, higher number, feed the machine, take the risk, ride out the dips because you have decades to recover. In your 50s, a second rule quietly moves in beside the first and eventually starts to outrank it. The game stops being only about growing the pile. It becomes about not losing it. Here's why the shift is forced on you, not optional. When you're 30 and the market falls 40%, it's almost a gift. You're buying cheap and you have 30 years for it to recover and then some. When you're 62 and the market falls 40% the year before you plan to retire, that is a completely different event. You don't have 30 years to wait for the rebound. You might have 2. A crash on the eve of retirement can force you to work 5 more years, or to retire into a permanently smaller life. The same event that was harmless at 30 becomes dangerous at 60. So the mental shift of this decade is from accumulation to protection, from pure offense to a blend of offense and defense. This is where de-risking begins. Gradually, thoughtfully, the all-stock portfolio of your youth starts making room for steadier ground, so that a single bad year at the wrong time can't erase a lifetime of work. This is not about getting scared and selling everything. That's its own mistake, because you still need decades of growth ahead. It's about recognizing that the job description changed. You spent 30 years learning to grow a number. Now, you also have to learn to guard it. Both skills matter now, and only one of them was ever taught to you. For decades, how much is enough was an abstract, almost unanswerable question. In your 50s, it finally gets a real answer, and it comes from one clean piece of math, the 25 times rule. Here it is, and I want you to actually use it. Take the annual income you want your investments to provide in retirement. Multiply it by 25. That is roughly the size of the portfolio you need to fund that income indefinitely, drawing about 4% a year without running out. Let me make it concrete, because concrete is the whole point. Suppose you want $50,000 a year coming out of your portfolio, on top of whatever else you'll have. 50,000 times 25 is $1.25 million. That's your target. Want 80,000 a year instead? 80,000 times 25 is $2 million. That's the number. Not a vibe, not a slogan, not as much as possible. A specific figure you can write down, aim at, and measure your distance from. This is the moment the whole decade stops being about comparison to strangers on the internet and starts being about one honest, personal question. What do I actually need, and how far am I from it? Notice what happens when you put the real median beside a real target. The typical household is at $364,000. A modest $50,000 a year lifestyle needs $1.25 million from the portfolio. That gap between where the middle actually is and where the math says it needs to be is the quiet retirement crisis the cheerful averages hide. The 25 times rule doesn't create that anxiety. It replaces a vague dread with a number you can finally do something about. There's a window that opens for many people in this exact decade, and it may be the single most valuable stretch of saving years in an entire lifetime. And most people let it slip through their fingers without ever noticing it was there. Call it the empty nest window. The kids finish school and move out. The mortgage, decades in, is either gone or nearly so. And the income? The income is often at the highest point it will ever reach. For the first time in 25 years, the biggest expenses of your life all recede at once, and the paycheck stays big. Do the arithmetic on what that means. The money that used to go to college, to a bigger house, to feeding and raising other human beings, suddenly frees up, thousands of dollars a month in many cases, right when your earning power peaks. These should be the highest savings rate years of your entire life. This is the window where a household that has been saving 5% could plausibly save 30, 40%, and slam an enormous amount into that closing catch-up door in the handful of years that remain. And here's the tragedy. Most people don't. The moment the kids leave and the mortgage lightens, the freed-up money doesn't get invested. It gets absorbed. A nicer car, the bigger vacations, the lifestyle quietly expands to swallow the exact surplus that could have secured the retirement. Lifestyle creep, the villain of the 30s, gets one last and most expensive encore right here in the 50s. The empty nest window is a gift of 5 to 10 of the highest leverage saving years you'll ever have. The people who recognize it for what it is and pour it into the number instead of the lifestyle rewrite their entire ending in a single decade. So let's pull this together into something you can act on, because the point was never to make you feel behind. It was to hand you the moves that still work when time no longer does the work for you. If you're in your 50s and closer to the median than to your real target, here is how you beat the middle of the pack from right where you stand. First, Weaponize the catch-up contributions. The instant the system lets you put more into tax-advantaged accounts, do it and push toward the limit. In a decade where contributions outrank compounding, this is the biggest lever you have, and it's sitting right there unused for most people. Second, guard the empty nest window with your life. When the kids leave and the mortgage shrinks, do not let that surplus dissolve into a nicer lifestyle. Route it, automatically before you can feel it, straight into the number. Those freed-up years are the highest savings rate years you will ever get. Treat them like the emergency they secretly are. Third, define your 25 times number and aim at it. Stop asking whether you're behind some stranger's average. Multiply the income you want by 25, write down that one honest figure, and measure everything against it. And fourth, quietly underneath all of it, begin the shift from pure growth to protection, so a single bad year at the wrong moment can't undo the whole climb. Max the catch-up, weaponize the window, name your number, protect the pile. None of it requires a windfall or a lucky bet. It requires seeing the clock clearly and moving with intent while most people your age drift. The median, remember, includes everyone who never learned any of this. It is a beatable bar. Even now, even here, even this late on the hill. So tell me in the comments, in your 50s, are you above the average, above the median, or building your way there in the years you've got left? Wherever you're standing on this hill, the next dollar you route into the number and away from the lifestyle moves you up it. If this cleared some fog, there's a community doing exactly this work in the link below, and more of the climb waiting on the channel. This is education, not financial advice. Your numbers are yours, and a good professional beats a rule of thumb every time. Next up is the decade where all of this gets tested for real. Your 60s, the decade you find out if it worked, where the 4% rule stops being theory and becomes your grocery budget. I'll see you there.